Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, or good evening. This is your host, Tim Ash, the CEO of SiteTuners and founder of the Conversion Conference, and I want to welcome you to another one of our free webinars. Today, I'm very excited to have my friend Dave Booth presenting. He is the founder and principal consultant at Cardinal Path. They've been nominated and are a finalist for the Digital Analytics Association's Agency of the Year Award, a very prestigious award. Just shows that they're at the top of their game. Before we get started, a couple of housekeeping notes. We are recording this webinar. You will get access to the recording as well as the slides. And Dave has been kind enough to have his team put together a detailed ebook of everything that we're going to cover today. And they're going to email you with information on how to download that. Now, I've seen the slides. I know Dave's got a lot of high quality content, but he goes at New York speed, so we're going to probably use up all of our time, and you can't take notes as fast as he talks. So we'll have the complete ebook. Also, at the end, Dave has been kind enough. We're going to end right on the hour, but those of you that have a few extra minutes, we're going to try to squeeze in some questions. So during the webinar, you have a question pane on your GoToMeeting control panel. Please type in questions as you think of them there, and then I will moderate a Q&A when we're done. We're also going to have a couple of quick special offers for you that you might want to take advantage of. All right, so before we begin, a little bit of background for those of you that are not familiar with SiteTuners. We are a conversion rate optimization agency based in San Diego, but we work with clients all over the world in all industries, and we have one goal, and that is to get your website visitors to take the desired action once they get there. Seems pretty simple. We've worked with clients of all sizes, from some of the largest companies in the world down to very nimble, smaller businesses. And we have three main service areas. The first is redesigning websites for higher conversion. We're the architects that give you the blueprint for a high converting web experience. The second is ongoing conversion mentoring, staff training, knowledge transfer, teaching you how to fish, or being like a virtual outsourced growth hacking arm for your company. And of course, finally, A/B and multivariate testing and test strategy development. So you can engage us on a project basis or, as I mentioned, on an ongoing monthly basis. All right, well, enough about SiteTuners. Let me tell you a little bit about Dave. Dave is a very smart guy, and his company merged with Cardinal Path to create one of the leading analytics consultancies in the world. We originally met when we were one of the charter companies along with his company on Google Website Optimizer, which was Google's free testing tool. And that was part of the extended Google Analytics community. These guys live and breathe conversion rate optimization, analytics, everything having to do with measuring and the effectiveness of your online marketing. Dave's done courses on lynda.com. He literally wrote the book on display advertising in another life, and he's just going to dish it to you. So Dave, without any further ado, I'm going to throw it over to you. Welcome.
Great, thank you, Tim. And the first thing I'd like to do is just reiterate that welcome and say thank you for taking an hour out of your busy day to stay with us today. Hopefully you guys are seeing a screen right now that says Google Analytics Tricks for CRO. As Tim has kind of alluded to, we have tried to pack as much possible value as we can into this hour for you. And I'll just reiterate that there will be a recording of this available later on, shortly following this webinar. So for those of you who think I'm going too fast, you can certainly slow me down, but for those who think I'm going too slow and are a little more advanced, feel free to skip ahead and speed me up however you need to do that. But don't feel the need to take notes on every little thing that we talk about here. You will have access to the full presentation right afterwards. As far as what we're going to talk about, I like to kind of use the analogy of a freight train coming out of the station. And what we're talking about here today is going to be tied to conversion rate optimization using some of the cool things that we have access to with Google Analytics. Now, a lot lot of you are probably prolific users of Google Analytics. You're in the reports all day, every day. Some of you maybe not so much. I'm going to hope that some of this is familiar to some folks, and then I'm going to hopefully show you some things that you may not know exist within the Google Analytics platform that can be very, very helpful with conversion rate optimization. So the first couple bullets here, we're gonna go and touch on just the highlights of how to find segments within the tool that are ripe for conversion optimization or targeting to have a high probability of a conversion. Then we'll talk about how we can both market and remarket to these high-value segments, because a lot of the things that we'll identify end up becoming targetable attributes on a lot of the ad platforms that are out there. And then we're going to really dive in here to a little-known feature inside Google Analytics around product data and how we can use this to find highly likely to convert products and services that we can up or cross-sell to our audiences, as well as talk a little bit about how the e-commerce reports have evolved and allow us a little better insight into what we're looking at from the e-commerce perspective. And don't worry if you're a B2B or don't have something to sell on an e-commerce platform. A lot of these things will apply to you anyway. We'll move into the last section here, which is really kind of using some of the hooks that Google Analytics gives us to do some personalization. And as we all know, personalized offers are kind of that holy grail of online marketing these days, the right offer to the right person at just the right time. And we'll talk about some of the data we can use, how we can integrate and key off of some of the Google Analytics data that's out there to start to create personalized offers and personalized campaigns for extremely high conversion campaigns that you may be running. So with that, we're going to go ahead and dive right in. And I think the first thing we're going to probably want to talk about here is this idea of segments. So we know that not every visitor to your website is the same. And unfortunately, a lot of us treat them that way. Actually, every single one of these visits and sessions can be sliced up into a number of different segments. And what we're looking at here is a way to kind of cut up the different pieces of traffic that are coming to our website along behavioral attributes and other types of attributes that we have access to within the data. So, for example, you may have someone who has never been to your site before, and you may have someone who comes to your site 25 times a day. There's a very different experience between that loyal customer and that first-time visitor. And the expectations that we have of them would be very different as well. Of course, we wouldn't expect a person who's never been to our site before to be someone who's out there on the social channels telling us, singing our praises and so on and so forth. We may expect of a loyal customer, however. There are geographic segments. There are technical segments along the operating systems or the types of devices that people are activating from, or the types of places that they come from and the campaigns that are pushing certain products and services that they're clicking on. The point is, every one of these things is an opportunity for us to have a very personalized message because we know something about the user. So each of these segments is going to perform very differently against the goals of our website. And again, for those of you who were in the last webinar that we did with SiteTuners, we spent an entire hour talking about these segments, how to identify and create these special segments. So I'd encourage you to go back, take a look at the recording of that one. We're just going to touch on the highlights here and then keep these things in mind as we move forward in the webinar today. So from a highlight perspective, one place you're going to want to go to find a lot of these segments is in this audience section of reports that you can find on the left-hand side of your screen with Google Analytics. All of these sorts of reports are going to give you insight into attributes and behaviors around the audiences that you can then compare to see which ones are good for you and which ones are not so good for you. And we can take a quick example here. This is one that we're using the DoubleClick audience integration for, which brings in age and gender and interest category data. Lots of neat stuff that we can pull in and start to see how these folks are performing on our website. Now, when you first click on an age report, you're not going to see this view. So I want to make it clear that we're using a comparative view. That's the one I've just highlighted right here. So when you click into Google Analytics, make sure that you click into this comparative view, and you can suddenly see a whole bunch of things. I've used these drop downs to show revenue, and we can see very, very clearly that there's a certain age group that's very, very interested in the products and services that we have to sell in this example. And we can also see very clearly that the young people and the old people are not. Which means that in this case, we better not spend any more than $24,000 or $25,000 in our acquisition channel to try to get them. We're just not making that money back. And they're not very likely to convert. In fact, you can see just on a revenue basis, this is almost a 10x difference. So we'd be much better served to target our campaign strategy towards the people in this age group that we know this segment of users is much more likely to convert. And again, this is a bit of a recap, but we've seen a lot of different segments we can create in past webinars. I just want to call out that you don't have to limit it to just one. So in this case, if I wanted to look at not just age, but also gender, I can also use this secondary dimension right here to add these two together and kind of get the combination of these two. So here we can see very clearly that we have some specific combinations of age and gender that are very likely to convert on our website. Here in particular, we can see that females between the ages of 35 and 54 years old are very highly likely to convert target for us. You can see we've focused in on the conversion rate here for an e-commerce conversion, but this could be any kind of conversion, whether it's e-commerce or not. And again, this lets us go out there and target our media, target our audience to get these high value customers. Again, in this particular case, we wouldn't want to spend a lot of time on the young men. They're not very likely to convert in this particular scenario, in which case we can use this data to really guide our strategies. And again, it's not just the CAN data that you've got out there. You have this ability to go into the advanced segmentation. And again, by way of review, in every one of the reports that you're in within Google Analytics, you can use this segmentation to add a segment overlay to the data you're looking at. And it will really just kind of, instead of showing you that whole orange by the way of the analogy that we used in that first slide, it will show you just the slice of the orange that you've defined. And there are a number of pre-created segments for you. So when you first click into that, you don't have an empty blank canvas staring back at you. You have a bunch that Google was nice enough to build for you. And you can see things like people who came from a certain traffic source, or people who came from a certain device, or people who came back to you more than once over a given period of time. And it's really as easy as just putting a checkbox next to the ones you want to look at. In this case, we've checked off both mobile and then tablet and desktop traffic. And we can take a look at that, click the apply button, and we're suddenly looking at a report where we're only looking at traffic from a certain segment. You can see the blue lines represent traffic coming from mobile, and the orange line represents traffic coming from non-mobile or tablet and desktop, the larger interfaces. Now, in this case, this can be a very, very interesting piece of data for us. We can see that we don't get a lot of conversions on the mobile device. You can see 0.05% versus a 0.4% conversion rate on the other devices. Now, this can be something that helps us guide our targeting to target highly likely to convert people on non-mobile devices. It could also be an indication that we have a terrible mobile experience, or perhaps we have a great mobile experience we just invested a gazillion dollars in, and it's just not performing. But either way, we can see there's a very big difference between the segments here of mobile and non-mobile traffic. So this is, again, the idea that we have. And we have one more thing I want to touch on, which is the ability to create custom segments. So we saw that we have this ability to look at the system level segments that Google has built for you, but the one next to it or below it on the left-hand side is called custom. And to do that, we'll go ahead and click this big red button, create a custom segment, and here you can see that we have access to just about any dimension, any metric, any level of and, or, and sequential logic to figure out exactly what slice of that orange we want to be looking at. In this case, we've just showed a very simple one where we're creating a custom segment of what we're calling highly engaged visitors. And we've defined that as anyone who's seen 3 or more than 3 pages in their session, as well as stayed on there for at least 2 minutes. But again, you can create these with whatever level of creativity you have and get very, very detailed. So again, I'd point you back to the full hour we spent on this with SiteTuners, and that video recording is available as well to take a look at a whole bunch of these. And then the only other thing that I would like to call out is that you're not limited to just the dimensions and metrics and the hundreds and hundreds of them that Google collects by default. You can also use custom data that you can inject into the system. So for example, if you have different levels of customers or a loyalty program where someone can reach a platinum, a bronze, a gold, and a silver level, you have the ability to set up your Google Analytics implementation to collect that data and set it as a custom dimension that you can then use for any kind of segmentation. So not just customer type, but there are lots and lots of uses for these custom dimensions. And once you've collected them, the point I want to make here is that they become a part of the data that you have available to you to create any one of these segments that you want. So this particular one just shows a way of creating a segment out of all of your people who have matched and reached that silver status of your customer type, your customer loyalty program. So with that, hopefully this is a bit of review for most of you. For those of you where it's new, again, there's a full hour dedicated to this, but I want to just make sure we recapped it because we're going to come back to these things in the later parts of this webinar. And I think it's an important piece. Now, the next obvious question is, how exactly are you going to create this custom dimension? And I'll talk about this just briefly so that we come back to it. It'll make sense a little bit later. The way you do that is pretty much a 2-step process. Number one, you'll go into your administration in Google Analytics. You'll create a new custom dimension. you'll give it a name, and you'll click on the blue Create button. The last step is to actually create some code. So you'll send this over to your developers, and they will use this either through a tag management platform, or they'll use the native GA code, and they will implement this on the website. Now, we're going to come back to that in just a minute, so I wanted to just tee that up right now. Now, switching gears, how do we activate this data? And this is a really, really important part. So we've gone through the effort of finding all of these great segments. We've looked through all of our reports and all the behaviors and attributes that Google Analytics is giving us. And suddenly we have these comparative views that show us the green is good and red is bad, and we see some segments that we want to go out and target. And a lot of folks get hung up on this and say, well, that's fantastic. Thank you, Google Analytics, for showing me all of my best customers, but I have no way to target them. Well, there's a lot of different ways these days in the different ad platforms that we have and the different ad servers that we're using that allows us to do that. So number one would be to just target some of these attributes in the platforms that you're advertising on. For example, we have gender and age, which we just looked at, that are available to you in the AdWords platform, is what we're looking at screenshots of here. But we also have double-click data coming in. So these are, of course, available in the double-click platforms. Just about any other advertising platform out there that you may be using will give you the ability to target things like geographies, you can see in the locations that we're looking at here, or specific devices, whether that's through device targeting or through specific bid modifiers. And over here on the right, we're even looking at some in-market or interest and categories for people who are clearly showing an interest in one thing or another. And again, this can be a very, very complex topic when you add in data management platforms and DSPs and all that good stuff. But for now, the point is you can actually action those segments right now to enhance your probability of getting a conversion by attracting the highly probable to convert segments in the first place. And I think that's the main point here. So we can go out there and grab these audiences and really pull them in that we know have a high likelihood of conversion, reduce our budgets on the ones that don't. And then we also have the ability to retarget people who have been on our website and have fallen into one of these segments. And I just want to recap the way that we can do that with Google Analytics, specifically on the Google advertising platforms. It's a really easy integration that they've built for us. So you can see here we've built a segment inside Google Analytics of anyone who during a particular session, during one website visit, they have had over $500 of revenue to us. Now, this is typically going to be indicative of someone who has purchased a very big ticket item in this particular context. That may not be big for whatever it is that you do, but for a retailer, maybe that's considered a big ticket item purchaser. So we can create this segment, apply or save this segment, and start to look at the data. And if we identify this as a very highly likely to convert a segment, maybe has a very high e-commerce conversion rate or an average order value or whatever it is that we've set as our conditions to call them highly likely to convert or valuable or not valuable, let's assume they're valuable and that we want to target these folks. So we're digging around in our reports and we have this segment applied. You can see it here. We've got the big purchase big ticket items segment applied. And all we have to do is use this little drop down here and then click on the build audience option. Now what that's going to do is allow us to export this audience into the Google AdWords platform if you're on Google Analytics Standard, or also the DoubleClick platform for those of you who have access to Google Analytics Premium. And this is really, really neat. Because once I've done that, I can literally log into AdWords and I go into my targeting criteria and I see that under my remarketing list, I have one that's now called Purchased Big Ticket Items. And Google Analytics is going to continue to populate this particular segment with new people who fill this list. And of course, we have our list expiration dates and our look back windows, but we can at this point create an ad and a campaign and an experience to start advertising to these people all over the web that we know are highly likely to convert. And we are only targeting these folks with a particular message, with the particular attributes that we know are likely to convert, which makes this a very, very powerful set of tools that we have within Google Analytics and Google AdWords. So again, I said that would be quick, and hopefully it was. For those who want some more information, head over to that hour-long course. For those that thought that was review, we're about to get started on some new stuff. So we're going to switch gears. We're going to come back and touch on some of those things that we just looked at throughout the rest of this webinar, but hopefully the rest of this stuff is going to be relatively new for you, or at least useful that you can take and start using right away. And the first place we're going to focus is on product data. And I want to kind of give this as a background from the history of specifically Google Analytics, but less specifically lots of analytics tools that were out there. There's been a definite evolution in the platforms that are out there. In the traditional Google Analytics e-commerce reports, there was not a whole lot of useful information. And I'll go out on a limb and say that. Before some recent updates to the tool, Google Analytics would essentially be able to tell you what someone bought in the past. Not a whole lot more. There may have been a couple of reports that were fairly somewhat interesting, but outside of that, you would be much better served to go to your e-commerce platform or your back-end system of record to figure out what products were purchased, what SKUs were purchased, how many were purchased, those sorts of things. And then we got a little bit smarter. So with the advent of Google's enhanced e-commerce, which is a universal analytics feature, they started to include information around not just things that people bought, but things that people were interested in but maybe didn't buy. And this is going to be taking us down that path to prediction, which is where we're going to be able to start to predict what someone wants to buy next or what they're in the market to buy immediately. Those are the things that we can really key off of. Knowing what someone bought in the past is fairly limited in its uses, but knowing what they're about to buy or what they have an interest in is extremely useful for us in terms of targeting the right people and getting highly likely to convert people onto our website. So we're going to kind of look at each of these three steps, and we're going to really focus on that third step with a little known Google Analytics feature that's out there. So number one, back in caveman days, before we had evolved, we had these old e-commerce reports that essentially told us what was bought, how many were bought, how much money was in there, and what was the average price. That's about it. Again, not a lot of use to go into these reports. The one that I will say was interesting was you had time to purchase reports that showed you both the number of days, the number of sessions that it took to get somebody onto the website and actually buy something. But outside of that, again, you were much better off looking at your system of record for this kind of data. And then we had this advent of enhanced e-commerce. And what it really did was it opened up the visibility that we had into the consumer buying cycle. If you think about it from the perspective of just tracking what it was that was purchased, you're really only looking at this one purchase phase. But we know that there's a lot more that happens inside the consumer buying cycle. It starts with being made aware of a product, and then you have to recognize the need that you actually need the product you're aware of. Eventually, you look at all the competition and you evaluate your alternatives. Then you do some research. Eventually, you do your final evaluation and you make the purchase. And there's a lot that's happening there before that purchase. Well, enhanced e-commerce really focused on that and took a look at all the things that led up to a purchase. And from a shopping cart perspective, we can kind of quantify that, and I'll show you what that looks like here in just a second. I just want to, before we leave this slide, say that there's also a lot of post-purchase behavior, and that's where we're going to go with the prediction here in just a minute. So from an enhanced e-commerce perspective, it's a whole new overhaul to the way Google Analytics handles e-commerce and product-based transactions. And you can start to see that, well, the old e-commerce infrastructure would only support the transaction level of what was purchased. We start to get a whole lot more visibility of that full path to purchase. So first of all, anyone who was made aware of us came to our website. And we can, of course, drill down into this at any level of detail that we want, by any segment that we want. I'm just showing us the higher level architecture of this. Once someone is made aware of our site, we can then see which products they may be interested in, just by viewing them or by clicking on them in a merchandising pane or by playing with them in an image pane or something like that. We can track all those events that are happening. Then they will eventually add something to a cart. And as we know, a lot of people who add things to cart don't actually check out with it. So we can start to see them add it and show that intent signal, and then go through the checkout process, eventually put in the credit card or payment information, and eventually say, yes, I want that product. And again, each one of these steps within enhanced e-commerce allows us to drill into the product level, the product category level, the SKUs, the options. We have a lot more data that we have access to that helps us understand what people were interested in but didn't want to buy it. And of course, that becomes extremely helpful. When we have access to this data in Google Analytics, we can then create segments, both in the whatever level of data we want by accessing these dimensions and metrics individually, or you can see that they've actually added an e-commerce tab for enhanced e-commerce that allows us to very quickly create segments around people who've added things to cart or purchased something, and we can start to retarget these by using that same integration that we looked at earlier. So this is kind of that walking area of evolution. So we crawled with the old Google Analytics. We started walking with the new enhanced e-commerce. It's part of universal Google Analytics. And now we're going to talk about a little bit of a secret here. And I'll introduce this as a parent here. This is kind of the parent's worst nightmare, that the child is being excluded. I'm a parent, I'm also a businessman, and I know that in the cutthroat world of business, you better make sure that that is not you being excluded. So hopefully everyone here is let in on this little secret, and all of your competition is out there wondering what we're talking about today. I'm going to talk about what's called related products. And this is a feature that a lot of people don't know about because it's not part of the Google Analytics interface. You have to access it a different way. And I'll talk to you about that and walk you through exactly how to do that in just a second. But to set it up, I want to give you an example from my own company. We do, in addition to analytics and digital intelligence and data consulting, a lot of training. So we have a separate website out there, and on that separate website, we've got a lot of analytics that tell us a lot of things, but we're basically only selling one product, and that is courses. So people can sign up for a number of different courses, and we offer AdWords 101, 201, Analytics 101, 201, and 301, and we offer them across cities across North America. Now, we do lots and lots of these, and it's interesting to us to try to get people to sign up for as many as possible. All right, put yourself in the shoes of the business owner of this particular business, and you would have the same sorts of things. You want to get as many people into these courses as you can within your limits, so that you make sure that you have a positive and profitable experience. So the first question that we had is, when people don't sign up for all of them, which ones do they sign up for? And this can be exceptionally useful information. And I'll show you how this information is used here by following through on this example. But step one is to, first of all, understand which of these courses tend to go together and which ones don't. And Google Analytics gives us a way to do that. I'm going to take a look at, again, not the front-end interface of Google Analytics, but we're going to use the API. Now, for all of you who are not developers and just dropped off the webinar, I hope you didn't yet, because you don't need to be a developer to use this. Google has put out a great little tool for us that they call the Google Analytics Query Explorer, and it allows non-developers to make API calls behind the scenes to then bring back all the data that they may want. You can find it at this link that I've got up here, and this is going to help us to understand and predict what people might want to buy next, and create some segments that are very, very, very highly likely to convert on a very particular product, which is an interesting thing for us. So the first thing that you do when you go to this link is you're going to be asked to log in with your Google account, and make sure it's a Google account that has access to the Google Analytics account that you want to take a look at. In this case, you can see I'm logged in as Cardinal Path. I'm looking at a Universal Analytics property here. I also am looking at a specific view or profile of that, and that will give me access to all that data. Now, here's the next part, and this will be the most technical thing that we look at all day, I promise, and you don't have to know any code. First step is to put in the GA ID. It's going to pre-populate that for you, so that one's done for you, nothing to worry about. Now, the next thing we have to do is we have to carve out the dimensions and metrics, and these are very specific ones that are not available in that interface, like I said before. So the first thing you do is you click on this little drop-down in dimensions, and it's going to bring up a big, long window of all the things you can check off. And what we're going to do is scroll all the way to the bottom, and we're going to look at this section that's called Related Products. Now, you can see there's a bunch of them available to you, but just to get started, we're just going to use the product ID and the product name for both a query product and a related product. And again, once you've done that, it will pre-populate this field. You don't have to type a single thing. Just check these boxes off and move on to the next one, which is metrics. Again, we're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom here. We're going to look at that grouping of related products metrics, and we're going to check off the three that we have: the correlation score, the query product quantity, and the related product quantity. Now, as with any query, you can again make this more complex by applying any segment that you may have, or put any filters or sorts in place, bound your dates by a start and an end date. You can even specify a max number of results, which I've left at 50 here. I'm just going to give you a quick sort and a quick filter that you can literally copy and paste character for character here. What I've done is I've said, I want to limit this to only products that I've sold at least 20 of, or more than 20 of. And this will eliminate all those kind of one-off things that I've only sold one or two of over time. I just want to get these high volume opportunities as well. And you can see that I'm sorting descending, that's what this little minus sign means, based on this correlation score. And this is a good time to talk about what that correlation score is. Google Analytics is going to use its own algorithms here to calculate the probability of two products being purchased together. And we're going to see what that looks like in just a minute. But this is where we can start to see how products relate to one another. And I can answer my question of which courses are people buying together. And then we can start to use that data. So you can see I've limited it to 50. The last step we have is actually a very simple one, which is click the Get Data button. And once we've done that, it's going to actually give us a table right there in the interface of all the data that we've just requested. And then you can export it into a format that you can load into Excel very easily, which is what I'm going to show you right here. So this is real data from our training sites, and we can start to see, I've got it down to the level of a product ID itself, so I can see the cities as well as the level of course that people are signing up for. And I can can then just blow up these first two here, and I can see there's a very high correlation between people who sign up for the Analytics 101 course and the 201 course, specifically if they're in the same city of San Diego. Now, I'm looking at the reciprocal of that in the row below it, and it will have the same correlation score. But this tells me that there's a very high probability that people will sign up for both Analytics 101 and 201, much more than they would, say, Analytics 101 and then AdWords 101, which was maybe a hypothesis we might have had. Now, again, this is great. I know that a lot of people have done this, but I also know a lot of people have not done this. And I know that people who have not done this are ripe for me to start to market a very particular course for them. So let's take a look at this. Knowing that there's this high probability, I'm going to go after a segment or a target. I'm going to do some interesting things with them that I can really use to push that likelihood of a conversion on a very specific product offering through the roof. And that's what we're going to kind of do here. Number one, I can do it on the website itself. So when I see someone on a website, specifically here on a San Diego course, and they have tried to sign up for just Analytics 101 and nothing else, right there, I can use that knowledge to go ahead and put something in the interface that says, hey, listen, I see you're trying to sign up for 101 without 201, and I can make you an offer. So maybe I take $50 off the package price if you sign up for both of these things, and I can get you to do this. Now, I know you're very likely to do it anyway because there's a high correlation between these two products, and I know that you've got one and not the other. So this is a thing that can help us to boost our probability of a conversion on this upsell of Analytics 201. So right there on the site, there's a lot you can do. Let your creativity run wild. There's, of course, no limit to how you can use this and what you can do on your own website. And again, think this through from not just the e-commerce perspective, but from the other things that you may be treating as conversions as well. Now, the other thing that we can do is we can use this to drive merchandising. So you've all been on the websites that tell you what it is they think you should buy next. You buy, socks, and they say, hey, we recommend some shoes for you as well. People like Amazon and eBay and all these guys are notoriously good at this. They can do it to the point where, personally, I don't even make a shopping list anymore. I just log into Amazon once a week or so, and they tell me what I'm running out of and what I need next. It's pretty amazing how they're doing it. But from that perspective, I can then update my merchandising blocks, for example, and instead of putting a generic message, I could use this merchandising block here to really push 201 to someone who I know has signed up for 101, but not yet 201 on that segment. And I can put whatever messaging I want in here. Of course, I can do this in any block of area of the website that I can control, and you got a lot of opportunity here for that on-site promotion anywhere on the site. The other things that we can do is outside of our website, we can use this to really drive our email segmentation. So a lot of folks out there will have tons and tons of data at the customer level from a CRM, customer relationship management tool like a Salesforce or Sugar or Microsoft Dynamics or any of the others that are out there. You may also be using an email platform to send out email blasts and whatnot, and maybe your e-commerce platform does this for you, in which case you will have a list of people, their email addresses, and their history. And you could very, very easily, in any of these systems, write a quick query that says, give me a list of all those email addresses of people who bought the 101 course for Google Analytics in San Diego, but did not buy the 201 course. And that will give me a list of email addresses that I can then send a very specific email to. And at this point, I'm not bothering anybody with a blind email blast. I'm targeting very, very specifically people who I know have a high likelihood of converting on this 201 goal. So I'm telling people in this case, hey, you made a huge mistake. Make sure you sign up for 201 We'll give you an offer. In this case, we're throwing in a unicorn and a trained fighting monkey. But whatever the offer might be, we're able to go in and make that high probability offer to get someone to be upsold on that 201 course. Now, again, what's interesting about that is I can do this back through analytics, and we're coming back to this idea of segmentation at this point. In this case, you can see that I've used the segmentation feature to create a custom segment of people who need to get Analytics 201. I've used these parameters of users that have gotten the 101 course, but I'm excluding those who have not had the 201 course. This segment, I can then very, very easily apply to a report, use that little dropdown, and build a remarketing audience for it. Again, export that right into Google AdWords and start building some campaigns around it. Or if you're a Google Analytics Premium customer, you also can do this on the DoubleClick platform and export those lists there too. So it gives you tremendous reach for people who want to purchase a course that you know they want to purchase, they haven't purchased yet. So lots and lots of different ways to do this. Now, we're going to kind of continue on this path. What we've really been talking about so far is personalization. And what that means is making sure we're giving the right offer to the right people at the right time to have that highest probability of a conversion. And we've talked about it specifically by using data that comes from related products in Google Analytics and that API only feature. But we have lots of other signals that we can come up with. In fact, we looked at them earlier in this webinar. Anything that you have access to in Google Analytics, you can find a green line or green bar that tells you you have a highly likely to convert segment. Anything you can create a custom segment for can show you that you have a highly likely to convert segment. And the key here is to use that data to then personalize the experience and make sure that we get the right offer in front of the right person at just that right time. Now, we're going to take kind of a crawl, walk, and run approach to this. There are some things that you can do right off the bat, pick some low-hanging fruit, and start to do some personalization with some very rudimentary tools and just your webmaster and Google Analytics. There are some other things we can put in there that may take a little more sophistication in the walking area. And then when we start running, we'll end this just by talking about some of the other tools that are out there. That this is obviously something that can be done on a grand scale and an enterprise scale, and I'll talk about that to end this one off. So we're going to kind of go through these as the rest of this webinar and talk from these perspectives. So number one, crawling. One thing that a lot of people use in Google Analytics are what are known as campaign tags. Now, if you don't know what these are, you can do a quick search on Google for Google Analytics campaign tagging and get tons of tutorials about this. But essentially what it allows you to do is tell Google Analytics the source of a particular visit to the website. Now, in this case, let's take that example of the website or the email that I sent to everybody who I know does not yet have 201, but they bought Analytics 101. I may have that button there where it says sign up for 201 now. And if they click it, that's really just a link over to my website. And it's going to go to a URL. And this is the URL that it may go to. Now you can see the first part makes sense. Training.cardinalpath.com is our host name and our domain there. And then ga201.html would be our landing page. But all of this mess off to the right are what are known as campaign tags. Now, for those who are not technical, not programmers, don't worry. You don't need to know what any of this stuff is or how to format it. There are also tools that will let you do that. But I want to just dissect this. What it does is it doesn't change the landing page experience at all. Instead, what it does is it allows us to tell Google Analytics and explicitly overwrite anything Google Analytics may infer or assume with the exact source of the visit that we've got. And it breaks it up into 5 parameters. I'm showing 3 of them here, 3 of the most important ones, which are the medium of that visit. In this case, we've called it email. The source of that visit, we've called it a source of product type emails. And then the campaign, which is an upsell for a 201 product. You have complete freedom into whatever you want to put in here. You can type in your own name and it'll show up in the reports. Google Analytics does no data validation here. It's just the characters that you type in, which is tremendously freeing and gives you a whole lot of flexibility into how you want to identify these. And then inside Google Analytics, you can, of course, look at any of these dimensions. Source and medium, we've seen already so far in this particular webinar, but you've got other ones here. You can see campaign, UTM campaign will map to the campaign dimension. UTM source will map to the source dimension. UTM medium maps to the medium dimension. And of course, there are the 2 that I'm not showing here, one for the keyword and one for the ad content that you can use as well. So hopefully for some of you, you're using these things like pros and you have been for many years. For those that are new, this is something that we want to take a look at the very least. Where I'm going to take this is a little bit different. If I know that Google Analytics is going to have these campaign tags in there anyway, when I catch this click on my website, I can actually update my web server with some very simple logic to do some very simple personalization. So if somebody actually clicks on a link that comes back to the training side, I can put some logic in place that, this is just some pseudocode here, but if that UTM campaign query string variable has been set, and if its value is this 201 up campaign, I can do anything I want. I could change a picture. I could change a header or some text on the page. I could redirect someone to a different place. I could put a pop-up in place. There's really no limit to what I could do on the website. And I already know that if this condition is true, if someone has hit this campaign of 201 up, they have received an email from me that was triggered by someone who bought 101 but didn't buy 201. So I know a lot about them. I know some attributes that I can personalize. So let's take a look at how that might work. I could talk to my web developers and I could say, listen, we're going to put in this logic, and what we're going to do is we're going to identify 3 different things that we want to have rules around. So if that rule is true, we're going to update this image right here. We're also going to update this headline right here, and maybe we'll put an overlay with an offer on top of the whole page. So the way we would do that then is we check that logic if it's true when the web server is sending back the components of the page. What it's going to actually do is change those things out. So instead of seeing that generic image, you see this testimonial for how awesome 201 is, right? The headline changes to how good of reviews that the Analytics 201 course has gotten. And then, of course, we can do a time delay on it or do it right when they get there and put a little pop-up on there and say, hey, by the way, if you're going to San Diego and you want to go to Analytics 201, we've got a fire sale and you get 20% off with this particular coupon code. Again, all of these things can be accomplished by just swapping out some things that you already have on your website. And again, there are tools for this, but you don't need them. You can do this by just creating this logic inside your website as well. So this is the crawling stage. And we'll kind of come through a couple of other examples using these UTM parameters as well. You could tag just about anything that you want. So I showed you the example that we just looked at, but there's another one here. Let's take this example of the last webinar that we did here, and SiteTuners was kind enough to put up a blog post about it. On that particular blog post, let's pretend that we had a link back to Cardinal Path here somewhere in the text. That link could have been tagged with these UTM parameters as well. Now, in this case, you can see we've changed those things out to some different values. We're calling this a medium of partners. That's what makes sense to us internally. The source was SiteTuners, a specific partner of ours, and the campaign was the segmentation that we were talking about. So this, again, these three parameters tell me a lot about this visitor. I know that they were on SiteTuners website, or knowledgeable and aware of SiteTuners. I know that they're interested in segmentation, so I can create some rules again. And when I create these rules, I can then do the personalization experience. Now, I want to just say we're going to come back to this in a second, but let's pretend that we didn't get the chance, and the person that put this link up in whatever partner you have or whatever links you have out there doesn't give you the ability to put these UTM parameters in place. It's okay. I'm going to talk about a way we can do this from referrals here in just a second. And the way we do that is we look at what's known as the HTTP header. Again, for those of you who are not technical, don't worry. Your web folks will know exactly what we're talking about here. And one of the things that you get access to when you're loading up a website and your web server gets a request to load a web page on your website is this header request. And you can see in here one very key element of it, which is called the refer. And in this particular case, even if I don't have these Google Analytics UTM parameters, I can key off of this refer, and I can ask my web developers to implement this logic, which is, again, pseudocode. But if this refer contains sitetuners.com or a specific URL or whatever you want to do to create your rule, then I can, again, change some pictures, change some text, put in a pop-up, whatever it is that I want to do to personalize the experience. Now, in this particular case, let's pretend that someone came over to my homepage here, and when I don't know anything about you, I start telling you about benchmarking your online analytics maturity against lots and lots of other organizations we have in our database, and I'm trying to get you to take this survey as a call to action. But if I can collect either this UTM campaign parameter or if I can create a rule based on this HTTP header request, I can very quickly change that. And in this case, I know you're interested in segmentation, so I'm going to talk to you about segmentation, right, and tell you you can leverage segmentation to get a whole lot more out of your marketing budget. And here's my call to action. Contact us now, and we'll talk about segmentation. Not anything in particular or just guessing at what it is you want. At this point, I know what you want, and I can personalize this campaign. And again, these are things that we're doing still at the crawling stage. We haven't had to buy a tool yet. We just had to talk to our web developers and think through the logic of what we know about customers, the data we already have access to from a free tool like Google Analytics, and then the rules that we'll deploy here to make sure that that experience is speaking to the behaviors and attributes that we know we're targeting. So the next thing, we can walk. Again, we talked a little bit about these UTM parameters, but there's also lots of other parameters that you have access to. So in this kind of walking phase, one of the best ways to identify the intent of someone is to look at what it is they're searching for when they get to your site. So up here, you can see that I'm looking at the header of our training website, and I've looked at someone who typed in the word Austin. Very quickly, I know exactly what these guys want, right? They want a training in Austin, Texas. So I can certainly give them my search results, and they'll probably find the page that has also the Austin events both now and in the future. But I can also take this information and I can queue on it, a key off of it to give them a very specific offer. In this case, if I click that go button next to the search, I'm going to go to a link that looks a lot like this. So if you were to do this and look up in the address bar, you would see something that looks like this. Where I want to focus is in this variable called Q. And Q, you can see, will actually suck in whatever it was that they typed in, that indication of their intent, what it is they want. And I can, of course, create lots and lots of rules around this by looking at my internal reports and seeing what people type in on a regular basis, and then start to build these rules to give them a very personalized offer. Now, I'm showing you this is done with a Google-based internal search engine, but lots and lots of search engines expose this data in the query string. If they don't, there are technical ways you can do this. Talk to your developers, they'll know how to do it. But the point is you have access to a signal for intent. And in this case, when I see that, I can give that list of search results, but I can also create a rule, right? So if that queue contains the word Austin or Texas or anything else that I want to put in there, I can change some pictures, change the text, put in a pop-up that might look like this. So if I know you're interested in Austin, I could maybe save this offer for a little bit later in the session so I don't give you 10% that I didn't have to give you, or maybe I give it to you right away and say, hey, listen, we've got a today only 10% off sale going on, but just for Austin. And why did I give you that deal? Because I knew you were highly likely to convert on that because you've told me that you have an intent around Austin. So lots and lots of ways you can do this through query string parameters, through any data that you get coming in on the website. Again, we don't have to buy a separate tool for this. We can use this with just our web development team and the data and the rules that we can create. Now, we're going to start running a little bit. And I'm going to bring back this idea of custom dimensions and custom variables that we talked about a little bit later. And this is where we're going to kind of wrap up this webinar. We talked about this idea to set up a custom piece of data in Google Analytics, whether it's your customer type or a lead score or anything you can dream up. There are two steps. Number one, you configure it in Google Analytics. And number two, you have to add some code. What this code does is going to actually tell someone, tell Google Analytics when someone has achieved a certain dimension value. So in this case, if someone logs into the account, at this point I have access to this particular piece of data. So your web developer may say, as soon as someone logs in, I'm going to do a quick query on this particular user ID and figure out what level of customer they are. And then I've set this up in Google Analytics to be my dimension number 4. And I'm going to set this value as silver. So this is going to be someone logs in. Now I know what level they are. They're a silver value. I'm going to write this code back to the Google Analytics to tell Google Analytics that this user is a silver member. Now, what I'm going to say is that you can ask your web developers when they do this, either through the code or through a tag management system, to do one more thing. Set their own cookie. Now, in this case, what you can see is, again, just kind of some base pseudocode. That whatever the exact code will be will depend upon your website and the technologies you use to code it. But in this case, we're just setting a cookie. We're going to call that cookie level, and we're going to give it that same value of silver, and we're going to expire it after 30 days or 60 days or whatever it is that you want to put in there. Now, what this does is it gives us access to this data later on down the line. So we're kind of keying off of the same things that we want to do in Google Analytics, and Google Analytics will have access to this data on the back end. You can use it to do all your segmentation. But by doing this extra step, you're giving yourself the chance to act on all these dimensions later down the line. And again, when you're doing your analysis and you're looking at all these custom dimensions and you're finding these segments that are highly likely to convert, to make sure that they're actionable, you need to be able to have this hook somewhere on the site. So having it at the cookie level will allow you to access that cookie, read that cookie, and then create some rules based on that cookie, like this one. So if you see that cookie that has the name of level is equal to the character string of silver, then again, I can do whatever personalization that I want, put whatever offer in front of someone that I want. So I can change some pictures, change the user experience. At this point, maybe I'm trying to promote people from silver to gold because I identified in my analysis that people who move from silver to gold end up spending a lot more money with me. They have a much higher lifetime value, less likely to churn, whatever those elements of success that you've defined are. I can then very quickly pop up this offer that says, listen, we're going to make it easier for you to get from silver to gold. If you fly just 3 segments over the next 30 days with us, and you become a gold flyer instead of a silver flyer. And when you do that, I know that I've improved your loyalty. I have a very high likelihood that I'll just sell 3 more segments here in the next 30 days. And I have the ability for this person to sign up for this offer. So again, lots of different ways for me to tag off of the Google Analytics data that I'm collecting in my deployment, and then make sure I have access to it later on down the line to action that. Now, for those of you who are familiar with the older classic Google Analytics, you know that a lot of these custom variables, as they used to be called, were stored in a cookie automatically for you. It was called the UTM-V cookie. That's no longer the case with Universal Analytics, which is why this extra step is now a very easy way to accomplish the same sort of thing. So Before you ask why we couldn't do this with just that UTMV cookie, the answer is because we don't have it anymore in Universal Analytics, which we'll have to use going forward, and this new idea of custom dimensions and custom metrics versus the custom variables that we had in the past. Now, the last thing I want to talk about in our running phase here is that we've looked at ways to do this without tools and without additional investment past your own web development capabilities and team and the free tools like Google Analytics that you have to collect this data. But I also want to make sure that, we'd be remiss not to say that there's lots and lots of tools out there that do just this. And I'm not here to promote anyone in particular, but I do want to make it a point that you're aware. If this sounds like something that's pretty cool and something you want to implement, there's a whole host of solutions out there that focus on site experience, others that focus on specifically e-commerce and shopping upsells and cross-sells and things like that. And I'd encourage you to take a look at some of these and find one that may be useful for you. But every single one of them does the same major thing. Some of them will allow you to do testing, and some of them have additional value adds that they bring to the table. But at their very base, they will be able to key off specific behaviors, attributes of actual visitors, and then change things on the website, and then measure the impact of those performances over time to help you to continually improve your conversion rate as you go through this path to higher and higher conversions. And with that, that's all I've got for you today. So I hope this was useful. Again, we packed as much as we possibly could into this webinar. So I'd encourage you to go back to the video to take some notes, speed me up if I'm too slow or slow me down if I'm too fast. And then, of course, we'll have a handout that will be hopefully a replacement for any notes you may have taken that you'll get as a follow-up to this webinar that you've attended. So I want to thank you again for being a part of it, and I will turn it back to Tim at this point.
Great, David, thanks so much. Well, I warned you folks, David was going to fire hose you with solid information. I hope that you feel like I do that he's accomplished that. We're going to have time for some question and answer until the end of the hour. If you can go ahead and type in your questions to David into the question and answer pane inside of your GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll get to as many as we can. Again, a reminder, the webinar itself, the video, as well as the slides, as well as the ebook, are going to all be available to all of the folks that registered for this. Now, let's, David, I just want to ask you, just to start with my own question. I know we have a few in there already, although I think some of them are some really good ones. What exactly, what kind of sophistication or support do you need for the crawling stage, as you put it? What technical abilities do you have to have on your team?
Yeah, so this is a great part. I think a lot of folks get scared away by looking at code or hearing the word code. And really, the only skill you need to have is the ability to speak to a programmer. So you'll have people either internally or externally that are going to be able to, implement these things. They've already figured out how to implement that image or implement that text. All we're doing is asking them to implement that pseudocode where if something is true or if something happens, then do something else. Change that image, right? Change that text. And at the crawling stages, it's a little clunky and a little manual because we are, reliant on those rules and writing those rules. But that's really all you have to do is, look at the analytics reports, find a segment that you really want to target, and then tell your programmers, hey, listen, if you find somebody who purchases 101 and doesn't purchase 201, then pop up this little message that you're already popping up something there anyway.
Okay, well, as a recovering technologist, I must admit that you make it sound very simple. Talking to programmers is often a challenge in its own right, but we're going to leave that for another discussion.
I said that was all you had to do. I didn't say it was easy.
Well, before we get to more questions, I just want to let folks know your training on this is just world class. I know you guys have put thousands and thousands of hours developing these live trainings, and you take them around the country. In fact, Casey, who's melodic voice you heard at the very beginning of our seminar or webinar, is our director of marketing, is going to be doing the local one in San Diego this week. But I understand you have a special offer, an additional 10% off for this small hands-on classroom training at nearby cities or hopefully in your city. So if you're interested in that, use the special promotional code here, SiteTuners Special, valid anytime, doesn't expire. They're not going to cookie you, and just go to the link that you see there. Also, a couple of offers from SiteTuners that you might be interested in. If you'd like to know how ugly your baby is, and yes, I've been known to say your baby is ugly, we are now offering 5 mini reviews of websites to only the folks that are on this webinar. So if you have to register by next Friday, but I really suggest if you're interested in this that you do this now, because we're only doing the first 5 folks that come through that bit.ly/CRO review link. We'll be glad to spend about 15, 20 minutes and going through and doing a quick triage on your site. And finally, a quick word for our conversion conference. This is 5 years in the making now. We've had these all over the world, in Europe and the U.S., and strongly suggest you attend. We're only having one show in the U.S. this year, and that is in Las Vegas in May at the Real Suites Hotel and Casino. Right now is still the early bird rate. You can even get an additional $100 off thanks to this webinar. GA4CRO is the promo code you should use at checkout. We have some fantastic keynotes, 4 parallel tracks this time. Breakout tracks, 2 full days, and pre-conference workshops on May 12th. So don't miss it. Spread the word on that. We really hope to see you there. It's going to be fantastic. And we have some very special activities planned that are Vegas specific. All right, now back to you, Dave. One of the things that we're having folks asking of us about is what exactly, sorry, let me flip to the questions here. Do you have training in Canada? I know you have some staff in Canada. What is the closest that a Canadian can get to one of your locations?
Great question. So yes, we do. We train across the United States and Canada. The best way to figure out on an ongoing basis where we're going to be is to go to training.cardinalpath.com/locations, and you can see exactly where we're going to be and when. The schedule's up there. If you don't see your city on there, it's always a good idea to send a quick email over to us and let us know. If we get enough interest, we can certainly put that in there. But we do have one coming up in Ottawa, for example, March 2nd through the 6th. So that will be coming up real fast for you if you're in the Ottawa area. And again, just head back to that website and the locations area to see additional Canadian ones. Toronto is coming up in May 25th through the 29th, but you can see the full listing there.
Okay, and then, hey, someone's asking anything in Calgary. It's a big country, I guess, a lot bigger than the U.S., obviously. So yeah. I guess you can go to that locations page and you'll find the complete schedule of upcoming events there.
And one thing I know that's in Calgary is an airport, so that might be a good chance to get down to San Diego, or maybe we'll do one in Hawaii.
Yeah, there you go. Just to rub it in for our Canadian friends, it's about 20 degrees and sunny, that's Celsius, down here in San Diego today. So just saying, you could come down for the training this week, or next week rather. Okay, now when you're setting up product IDs to determine segmentation, Vanessa was asking, how do you set up product IDs and segment by that?
So you're okay. There's a number of different ways or different questions that could be being asked right now, but I think what we're going after is how do we get access to that product ID level data in the segments themselves. We don't have the ability to do multiple segments within that e-commerce tab that I showed you, but every one of these metrics and dimensions is exposed individually, so you can use a custom segment to create specific segments around people who have purchased or not purchased specific product IDs, for example, or activity around those product views is another dimension that you get within enhanced e-commerce. So there is a full list of dimensions and metrics in the developer.google.com/Google Analytics area that will show you all the different dimensions and metrics that you have access to within enhanced e-commerce, and the custom area of the advanced segmentation is where you're going to want to go to find all of those individually.
Okay, fantastic. Well, and for Alex asks about the posting to the previous webinar that you did with us. It's if you look in the chat window of your GoToWebinar, you'll see that we put a link there to the YouTube video, so you can watch David's last webinar with us. Okay, now another question. What exactly somebody's asking is, since GA or Google Analytics is only sampled, what are your thoughts on the quality of the data collected? I know that that's kind of an issue unless you're paying for the full version of Google Analytics. You're only getting a sample of people coming through.
Yeah, great question. So yeah, obviously you have the ability to remove sampling by going with the Google Analytics Premium route. That's not for everyone. One thing I will say is that the Google Analytics engineering team has been fantastic about continually upping the limits that you have in the free version as well. So over the past 12 months or so, you've seen very regular updates where the amount of data that is available as an unsampled portion goes up and up and up and up. That will continue. So, when you're looking at large time frames, you still may run into sampling issues, or if you have large websites that are collecting lots and lots of data, you can run into sampling issues. An easy way that a lot of people mitigate that is they will actually look at a specific block of time that's a lot smaller. So maybe instead of looking at a month, they'll look at the 30 days individually to avoid that sampling, export that unsampled data into a tool,
And
and
then
there's lots
bring
of
it all
tools that can help
together.
you do that, bring it all
Okay.
together. The only warning I would give you there is that session or user level data isn't aggregated that way. So for example, someone who comes to your site on a Monday and then on a Friday, you would see one unique user if you looked at a week-long report, but if you pulled it day by day, you would actually see
It's going
two
to look like
unique
more
visitors.
people. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, and somebody was asking, Jan was asking about enhanced e-commerce. Is that a custom report?
It's actually a complete overhaul to the e-commerce report. So what you would do is you go into a few steps. Number one, you'll go into your Google Analytics administration and you will enable it. So you say, yes, I want to use enhanced e-commerce. And when you do that, you have to retool your website. So you're going to have to do a redeployment of your code. All the old e-commerce code doesn't work in enhanced e-commerce. It continues to work. Don't get me wrong. It's still supported. But if you want to upgrade to enhanced e-commerce, you will have to do that additional step of recoding your website. And again, that's something that Cardinal Path helps a lot of people do over time.
Okay, now Don was asking, you used a lot of e-commerce examples, but is this something that is going to be helpful to non-e-commerce folks? Can you apply these same principles?
Yeah, absolutely. And we did that section on specific product relevance, so we tended to make the examples specific to e-commerce transactions. But if you take it back to the very beginning, any segment that you find for any particular conversion action that you may choose. So we looked at revenue and transactions, but you could use goal conversion rates or particular events that you're tracking that are happening. Any one of those things will still give you those green and red bars in that comparative view against whatever conversion or valuable metric
So
that you have.
whatever you want to call a conversion, it might be actually just a click through to a more relevant page deeper in your site, or it could be a form fill or something like that, or the appearance of a thank you page after an email sign up, right?
Absolutely, or even some of the call integrators that are out there, lots of solutions that will help you track a phone call as a conversion action as well, or other offline actions.
Yeah, by the way, for those of you that are not familiar, I understand that Google AdWords has now come out with a new ad type. Specifically, if you're trying to generate a phone call, that's the conversion action that they'll be tracking from now on. Do you guys have clients that are doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, AdWords has had call tracking now for quite some time. They rolled it out in lots of countries around the world. And then recently, as you said, Tim, this week, they have a mobile call only ad format that only uses that call as a conversion. The trick there is that only works obviously for AdWords generated traffic, but some of the other third-party tools out there will help you to do the same thing with any sort of traffic that you're generating to your website.
Well, David, thanks again. Unfortunately, we're up on our time. I want to thank everybody for listening in and stay tuned for notifications.